Welcome back, everyone, to Creative Work. Apologies, I think we were off last week. I can't actually remember because my brain's been in a fog. But we are excited to be back. If you don't know already, Creative Work is a part of our Creative Economy series. But we're in this show in particular, we discuss everything related to how to apply Web3 to your business. We speak with and interview creators and builders alike to sort of unpack their story, find the things that they've learned, and share their insights. So without further ado, we're going to jump in today. We're joined by our friend Rachel from xDAO. She's going to be giving us a little bit of an update on what's going on with her project, as well as some of her point of view of the things she's observing in the space. So let's get going right away. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Great to see you all.
How are you doing? It's been a while.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really anxious to talk to you again, Rachel.
Yeah. No, I missed you, Francine. We had such a great first chat. I've missed you since. But
before we jump in, just for everyone out there, do you want to just give a quick update on just what xDAO is and you know a little bit about you?
Yes, definitely. And by the way, that music was a really great beginning, and I caught myself in the bottom screen. I didn't even realize I was dancing. I was like going like this, and then all of a sudden I'm like, is that me? Is that me right now?
Why is my chair moving?
Thank you for that. Yeah,
I sit on a fitball, so when music starts, I'm always doing this.
That's awesome. It's good exercise. No, it's in all seriousness, it's very nice to be here again, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all and give you an update on xDAO and pick your brains. So just for anyone who might have missed the first session that we did a few weeks back, xDAO is on a mission to help people get jobs in Web3, specifically focused on empowering women and non-binary people, ultimately working to make Web3 hiring more inclusive. So in our community, we've got things such as resume review channels, places for people to come and talk about what skills they've done or roles they've done in the past and how they'll translate into Web3 work. Survey to collect data on how people are paid in the space, and starting to work with actually some data analysts and scientists to put together a thorough report there. So all things hiring in Web3, I've learned since joining the space in January, it's the Wild West out there when it comes to hiring. A lot of founders are first-time founders. A lot of them actually have never even managed, I'm finding, even more so managed or hired before. So I want to be the community where both founders can come to learn how to hire more inclusively and more effectively, but also candidates can come to find great opportunities. So a lot of progress since we last spoke, a couple changes, a couple updates, and happy to share them with you, and then I'll also ask you all of the burning questions I have that have come up since we last spoke.
So one big thing that has happened that I know of is that you have now transitioned to doing this full time.
Yes, big life change there. It's one of those things where I go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning just like thinking about this. And it was such like I had such like an intense passion for this that I felt like I really wanted to be doing this full time. I feel like there's a real opportunity here to make a difference. I had some conversations with people, across the world, across the country, who kind of before Web3 just like wrote themselves out of the workforce. They either didn't go to college, or maybe they had children very young, and or stay-at-home parents, and just assumed like I'm just not going to ever hold a job because I can't physically leave my house and this and that. And just like hearing from people the stories of how they've been able to get jobs in Web3 and community management roles, like super articulate, well-read, just inspiring people that have been able to get opportunities. I'm realizing more and more I want to be part of like pushing them forward and getting them to those places faster. So I think there's just so much opportunity for jobs in Web3. And there's also a lot of opportunity for us to make some mistakes like we have in Web2 when it comes to like inclusivity and hiring. So just want to be at the forefront of all this. So I ultimately left my job last Thursday. Was my last day at a venture capital fund in New York where I was helping founders. I had an amazing time there, and I'm speak very highly and feel very highly about everyone that I worked with there. But I really felt this was like a calling. So excited to be jumping in full time. My last day of that job was Thursday. Friday morning at 5:30 a.m. I had a call with a woman in Australia to talk about xDAO. So not much time off, but I am actually going to message Francine later to ask her about yoga retreats and things like that. Maybe after we launch and mint, I could plan like a 3-day trip. So
I think that's a really good idea. But you know what? I also think that this is a full-time job, and that many people got started in Web3 and thought it would be a side hustle.
Yeah.
And what I've learned in my almost 2 years of being around it is it's very consuming, and in order to do it well, it really is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And should be. I mean, it's the beginning of it was sort of misinformation or disinformation. Oh, you can be in Web3 and you don't have to work. Well, you do. It's a different kind of work.
Yeah, and it depends what you want to do, right? Because like there are a lot of people who came in early in the space and made like crazy money on crypto and investing, and I think if you're really trying to like build something, it does take a lot of time and a lot of work, and it is like all consuming in terms of like mental brain space for me, but in a very positive way because I enjoy it.
Well, tell us who you're helping and how. Would that be a good way to start?
Yeah, since we last connected, so we've just been growing organically so far. Like no paid marketing or anything, just really through word of mouth and Twitter. So we've got about 700 people in our Discord now, and it's pretty active. We've got about like 1,300 followers on Twitter, which is exciting. So really starting to pick up momentum there. In the space. The biggest update that we're probably most excited to share is that we were recently selected to be part of the Hedgehog Accelerator program. So Randy Zuckerberg and Deb Soon started the Hub, which is an awesome community, and they've been helping some projects get off the ground through what they're calling Hedgehog. So they had like, I think it was like 160 projects applied, and about 4 or 5 of them selected for the June cohort. So it's really like a boot camp. Today's my homework day. Yesterday, tomorrow, and then Friday are classes. And it's been a great couple of days of being involved in it. And we're just like, proud to have really had like the validation, honestly,
Wow.
that people were
How
like,
long is it, by the way?
it's a 2-week boot camp, but then they provide other resources as well.
I
I mean,
see.
there's other like meetings that we'll have. I mean, obviously the exposure and the marketing is really tremendous, especially because the 25,000 or so people who are part of the Hug community are people that we'd love to have in ours. So we're excited about that, and it's just a really it was very validating, and the timing was really interesting because we got selected last week, and my last day was Thursday, and then the first day of these classes started on Monday. So really nice, because I was like, all right, here we go. My next full time.
On to the next event. Give for ending my love. I mentored her years ago when she was 30 and having her first child. And what I really love is how she broke away from what could have been being overshadowed by her brother and carved out her own thing. And I love the spirit. I, of course, have Hug NFTs. You know, we're all, those of us who are part of the communities are part of the communities, you know, and we're beginning to see that there's a more, you're too young to remember this. Greg, do you remember Barcamp?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. So Web 2 had something called Barcamp, and some of this reminds me of Barcamp.
Yeah, it definitely has that self-organizing sort of positivity kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I have 2 extra hugs that I think I have 4.
Nice.
So I should do. I mean, maybe I'll give one to Arnold and Abhinav so they can like each get into the community and see what it's like. So Rachel, one thing I wanted to just dive into a little bit, you know, because, you know, and all of us last week or last episode, we were addressing sort of this, you know, the cliff that everyone sort of ran off, right? And sort of how, you know, entrepreneurs have to constantly adjust to sort of these new environments. And I know you probably even from the time you gave notice till now, a lot's changed. And I'm kind of curious, can you unpack a little bit in sort of, I guess, well, 2 things. One, what is the change that you have as you see it, right? That's happened sort of to the market. And I guess like, what's the impact on xDAO as a result of that?
And then you can answer my question, is there still a Web3 after current events, and how do we redefine that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And that's funny that you mentioned, Greg, like the time between when I gave my notice and left, because I gave pretty significant notice, like about 6 weeks before I left. So that was a pretty crazy 6 weeks. And, you know, probably like once every other day, my boss or at least someone at the office said, you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Have you seen the market? Have you seen where Ethereum's trading and blah, blah, blah. And
see, I'm so resentful of that, Rachel, because people constantly are confusing the market with the actual world. And, you know, the market has collapsed. And we all know that, but that doesn't mean the world has collapsed.
Yeah, I know, I agree. And I also think that it's an even more exciting time than ever to build. So if anything, and I'm the type of person who I don't lose sleep at night over comments like that. Like, to me, I'm actually more of the type that says, oh, I want to prove them wrong, and like I'm ready to challenge that. I always joke with people when we talk about, like, I'll be on a space, a lot of women-led spaces, and they'll say, how did you get involved in crypto? How'd you get involved in NFTs? And it's always a similar answer from a lot of the women in the space. My partner, my boyfriend, my husband was into crypto. So then I started checking it out, and then I got into crypto, which is great. Like, that's awesome to get involved that way. It's helpful to have somebody like very close to you, like, walking you through it. And I'm always like, yeah, my husband got me into crypto too, but he actually thought that NFTs were kind of like ludicrous, and he was doubting like this whole Web3 thing and told me he didn't really understand it and he didn't really think there was much there. And so he got me into it because I decided I wanted to prove him wrong. And I went on this like rabbit hole of like researching and learning about it. And now I'm working full time in this space. So.
See, it's funny because my daughter thinks Web3 is a Ponzi scheme.
A lot of people do. A lot of people do. I think there is a lot of crap, for lack of a better word, out there.
Right.
And there's a lot of like noise. There are really amazing use cases for blockchain and the technology, and I really do believe that. I think like the really good stuff's going to rise to the top during this time, and a lot of the noise will kind of fade to the bottom.
I really think it's still community.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm talking a lot, but I've been dying to discuss this with somebody because it has been such a major change.
Yeah.
But I still think it's the community. We all got into it for the community and the opportunity, but not for the money. And now it seems to be judged completely on the money or the lack of money or the fake money or the, the manipulation of money and,
Yeah. Well, have you, Francine, or anybody on this conversation, have you seen the Gremlin NFTs? Or the Goblin? What do they call it? Goblin? Goblin Town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just what Francine's saying.
Like, what? There's Gremlin ones? I want those too.
There might be a Goblin. I call my brother-in-law's dog a Gremlin. So that's why I got confused for a second. But yeah, I agree. I think community is a huge part of this. And I think actually during volatile market and uncertain times, like community even more so is important, right? Like you need people to like, just like the human connection, whether that be in person or online. I think for xDAO and for what we're building, I think it couldn't be a better time to build this and launch this, because what we're trying to do is say, here are ways to invest in yourself and your career and basically like get you to the next step. And so I don't want to like use fear factor as a marketing tactic, but like there are going to be
why not? It works really well.
There's going to be a lot of layoffs. Like there's so much uncertainty. And so like there's no better time than now to like invest in yourself. And like a lot of what our project is about is investing in yourself and your career and your professional growth. And so I think that's going to be part of, in a more positive way, not the fear piece, but like to get, that's going to be part of our launch is explaining exactly how people can benefit, especially during this time, by joining something like our community has to offer.
So what do the 700 people in xDAO's Discord do with and for each other?
Yeah, so I think I'm learning what probably most founders learn in the process is like you kind of assume and start building a product that you think is going to be like the most wanted by the community, and then the community tells you otherwise or tells you there's something else. I would say one of the biggest, like most like hottest popular channels in our Discord right now is the resume review channel, where people are giving each other tips and feedback on how to create their Web3 resume. I think there is a lot of work to be done when it comes to like Web3 resumes and what that will look like in the future, especially with like verified credentials on the blockchain. I think like, all of our resumes live offline, that'll change. But it's just a place where people can come and support each other and just like peer-to-peer give commentary on how to improve the way you present yourself to a potential employer to put yourself in a better position to get a job. So that channel's been really popular. So now we're starting to kind of build around that, right? Do we put together a team that are certified resume reviewers for xDAO? And is that part of like maybe the utility that all holders get is, X submissions a year of your resume? And so we're starting to build around that. The other one is just the job opportunities. It's so fragmented. Like there's no LinkedIn or like one central place. There's really no one central place in Web2, I guess, but it's definitely easier to find job opportunities in Web2. So right now we're also working through what our version of a job board might look like. And that's where I'm getting really excited about the idea of a referral social network of sorts. And that's what I'm like, what I really want to talk to you guys about. I'm trying to think through, like, can anybody be a recruiter? Can anybody connect someone with a job? If you have a network, if you know somebody who would benefit from talking to someone else, like, and you put them in touch, like, and the job comes out of it, then we should have some sort of like tracking on the blockchain that you can reap a reward for that. So I'm starting to think through like the tokenomics and how that could work. But that's like a big dream of mine, because I'm always encouraging people, like, is there someone in your network? Because oftentimes people think that they network in a way where they ask, right? But they don't really give. They say like, oh, I'd love to chat with you. I think Francine, you're so established and amazing.
I want to pick your brain.
I want to pick your brain. But I should be.
But I should hop into your Discord, because I've always been a huge connector. You know, the name of my first company was Hardaway Connections.
Yeah.
And the truth was that it's always been the best way to get people, not get people a job, but connect the talent with the opportunity, or whatever words we're using for that now, you know? Yeah, because it now there should be a tool that makes that kind of formalizes that connection, that maybe all the people in your Discord, you know, are part of that, and they're given an opportunity to contribute an opportunity, or contribute a skill or a talent, or I don't know, I haven't thought it through it all, but you know, it's so worthwhile. And I've always seen this as a completely weak part of entrepreneurship, that most entrepreneurs that I've advised have never hired before. And they go through a stage where they're going to hire their mother or their brother, or, you know, something like that. And nobody understands skill sets that are different from one another. And they try to hire somebody they'd like to have a beer with, you know. And so
where they went to school with, and then that person hires someone they went to high school with, the other person hires their cousin. And then, I mean, that's how you get these companies that, like, I've many times met with founders who are awesome and well-intended, who turn to me and they're like raising an A, and they have 10 people on the team, and they're all like related in some capacity, and they're all white men. And they're like, we want a diverse team. And I'm like, well, you know, the way you kind of built it so far, like, it doesn't really seem like you were thinking about that from day one. And so I think if we can come up with a very easy, seamless, very UI friendly system where people can refer people, that actually can make an actually more diverse system for hiring, because you're pulling people in and giving and opening a door for them that they would have never had access to, because they weren't hanging out on that job board, or they didn't go to that school, or whatever it may be. And so how do we like just do more of that? And then also
Greg started that Telegram group called Awesome Women, or something. What's the name of that group?
Oh, the Alpha Women.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Rachel's in charge of it now. I left.
Yeah. Oh, you did leave?
Oh.
Thank you for setting it up. It's a great group. I mean, people are.
Well, that group should be actually a tremendous source of, I don't know what to call them in Web3 language, leads, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I speak to probably at minimum like 3 to 4 people a day who are in.
I've got a question actually.
Oh, awesome.
For you, Rachel, which from Dennis which is how will this new job board improve the recruiting process, and will there be trash referrals?
That's a great question. And that's probably one of the biggest question marks I have. And I'm not sure for trash referrals if this is what Dennis is referring to, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot, is people just come on and make a bad referral. Like they refer.
Yeah,
they want the money.
Just like I'll send everybody to every opportunity or something, right?
A marketer for an engineering role. Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because that it's all about trust, and that would like very quickly disqualify our platform as like a place where you can get legitimate talent. And it's already super noisy out there, so we don't want to create more noise for founders to have to sift through and say, oh, this person's not even this type of role. So there would, I think that like in order to earn and be a referral within the community, there would be like some maybe vetting process, maybe like there's an algorithm where like the more matches you're making, the higher you are in terms of like your score on the platform. So then you become like a super connector, and have access to more jobs that you can connect people with, or some sort of algorithm that assesses quality of match. Because Dennis, I think that is going to be the key to this, because if we just like open this up and let anybody submit anyone to any role, and there's a lot of trash referrals, we'll have like a huge, this just won't work. It'll crash and burn. So I've been trying to think through like an algorithm of sorts, or some type of vetting qualification. I'm actually, that was on my list of asking, like, that to me, that's one of the biggest flags. The second like flag to me is like tracking, but I think that's more of a technical piece, and
Right.
something to do on the blockchain. But the referrals and the quality vetting, like technology can't always solve that. Like you need people, and so we have a team that vets all of the people that come on the platform. But I also don't want to create too much friction. I want it to be a place where a founder doesn't feel like they have to do so much work to make a connection. So do people get automatic, some type of signals based on their network size, whatever, or their role, that they automatically go higher in the algorithm? So I actually am curious if anyone here has thoughts on that, because I'm not sure the answer.
Well, I can only refer you to more. I don't have an answer either, because it's never been solved. But my one of my daughters used to work for Taleo, which was a Canadian company that that developed the talent management software that was bought by Oracle. And I would wonder if someone who worked for Taleo and developed the original algorithm, would be a good resource as a mentor. I think I have to call my daughter anyway. So I'm gonna call my daughter and ask her if she has anybody who worked on the architecture or the side that we could contact, because I think this is a problem that has never been solved. Now you do a resume and you submit it somewhere and it goes into a black hole. And when people used to say to me, what does your daughter do? Well, she works for that company that developed the black hole, into which your resume goes now when you apply for a job. And the best job boards are small, and they seem to be, I think, I'm not always applying for jobs, but they seem to be part of like things like Hacker News, or like industry specific sites where the people who are reading in that industry need each other.
Yeah, and that can be really good, right? Because then you're getting the type of talent you're needing in terms of their skill set. But like on the diversity side, again, like if someone just doesn't even know about that platform, or that's not or like maybe the platform itself isn't inclusive in terms of its language, and then there are people who are like, I don't want to use that platform. So it's like the idea of having humans involved, making the connections, makes sense. It
totally makes sense. And I think that I think that there are people who've done a lot of studying of diversity and inclusion, and maybe those would be people to talk to also, but not the ones that are hiring themselves out as DEI consultants, but the people who have actually studied it in school and studied what?
Oh, I didn't say anything. I think it was a little echo.
Oh, I thought somebody said something. Come on, guys, help me out.
I was going to say diversity and inclusion hasn't really been solved in Web 2, right? So, you know, the hire someone who's familiar to you. Like I'm speaking to people who are trying to solve the problem. They've got really successful organizations, but they're very homogenous, right?
Yeah.
It's people from a certain kind of college, certain kind of background, and that I think I'm not sure that there are great examples in Web 2 that have nailed that, right? So is there a unique way to solve that in Web 3? Because of the way that Web 3 is structured, everyone's CV is open and public. Then you can use a systematic way that kind of raises candidates up. That would be interesting to explore, but I'm not sure that Web 2 has a solution to DNI. I think Web 3 is trying to solve the DNI problem that exists in Web 2, right? That's kind of partly what the issue is. And then I was going to say on the scoring thing, it'll be interesting to, when you're talking about the trash problem, it'll be interesting to use kind of like, you know, I guess people have NFTs. You could use an NFT to participate, but you could ding them, right? So you give, let's say you give everybody in the network 10 tokens, right? And you've got to use a token to submit a candidate, and you only get it back if it's accepted, right? So you're not just doing one after another. And so there's a way to kind of keep score and reward people who are doing a good job.
Yeah, that's a really good. So on like the dinging, thank you for that. On the dinging front, I was like hesitant about the idea of like punishing for like I thought about that. I'm like, but then like I didn't really like the idea of it. But to give them the tokens and then to say you get it back if is like a lighter form of that.
Yeah. And then you could even, so then people, then there's an opportunity to sell people tokens more if they're like, look, this is what I do my daily job. Can I buy 100 tokens and I'll submit 100 CVs because I have the capacity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I worked at a contingency search firm for 4 years, and so something that came up just in our small search firm, right? People making poor submissions, and then the clients are unhappy, and it's not a good use of for anybody. So it's definitely it's hard to solve, but I think it's about incentivizing the right behavior through tokens and rewards, and then also like disincentivizing by I like that. I'm gonna think through what that model could look like to like take away or to give someone a limited number of submissions so that you just only have 10 shots. Right?
I am curious too. Do you think this is a problem that is only at the, I guess, the onset, like when somebody first joins and they're like just kind of blasting out referrals? Or do you think that once somebody is vetted in the form of, hey, I've made like 10 or 20 really strong referrals, then I can be trusted to continue to do that? Are you worried about like when they're established, them continuing to do well, or is it just more about new people coming on?
That's a really good point, because I guess like if somebody, like, is there a point in which we're not worried anymore, not really like even thinking about it because they've already proven that they can make quality submissions? It's interesting. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying before too. Like if someone comes in at a certain level already and things like that.
Well, if they have had a career of contingency search and they come with a book of business, or
there's a couple things I think of. Like, so one, I think like maybe in that model, like the idea of like just speed bumps or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Where your first referral, we wait some period of time, maybe we get some feedback, and then we open it up to give you, maybe even incorporating what Abhinav was talking about, where you get 5 more tokens or something, and then it becomes unlimited. And then to Francine, to your point, this makes me think of like some of the platforms that I'm on now that I coach for. Like you had to have worked at like a big tech company like a Facebook or a Google or something to be, before you can even become a coach. So it's kind of like they're using that as this mechanism to try to vet you to be like a qualified referrer or interview coach or something like that. So that's a bit more inclusive, I think. But I think, Francine, like what you were getting to is just something else that you can say you're vetted because you've got this in your background or because you've done this thing, right?
Arnold, that was really helpful because it triggered me to think of something else too, kind of in line with that. Is like, what if there were statistics that showed like these are the number that this person referred 10 people this week, 8 of them were accepted, meaning like 8 of them the founders wanted to chat with. Then you start having percentage rates that like show on your profile. And then from there, that can be interesting.
Here's a wonderful comment in the chat. I think there are some things that you guys are missing. People are judged horribly by recruiters. And yes.
I think part of it is for this is that I don't really want this to be just a network of recruiters. I think the idea is this is you're referring people in your network that you know, maybe you've worked with, as opposed to just someone you've seen their resume and made just an assumption, right? So I think that's such a great point to bring up. And I think we could like solve for that a bit more by having people verify other people. Like if you're a great referrer and you refer someone and maybe on paper, a recruiter would have looked at them and said, pass, but you've worked with them and you can, vouch for them on the platform. That gives you a new opportunity where you might have gotten shut down before. But that is definitely a problem. I think hopefully like in Web3, we'll have like different ways to evaluate talent too.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to scale because the only person I can use as an example is me, obviously. And what I do is I meet somebody like you, and then, 6 months later, I'm having lunch with somebody else, and I say, oh, you should really talk to Rachel because she runs, xDAO, and they are doing this exact thing, and you guys would benefit from knowing each other. But the kind of connecting that I do does not scale because I don't waste people's time, and that's a key to connecting people. And so it doesn't scale. And so monetizing it directly is very hard. And I never have, and I never have even tried to, because you can't have it be a really valuable connection that the other person is going to say, I know this is valuable because it came from her,
Mm-hmm.
So it's not scalable. Let's see what this person says. Yeah, they don't have enough people judging people by who they are, not keywords on a resume. That's right.
I mean, I've definitely spoken to recruiters who are, let's say, not necessarily high quality recruiters who really are just looking at, they're kind of going, look, candidates can't be from India, they can't have this, can't have that. And I've had very open and frank discussions, right? And so it's the good guys, there are good guys and bad guys, and I guess there are people who are just stretched for time, right? So there's definitely a lot of box ticking, especially if you've got enough candidates that you're like, I'm just going to throw enough stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So I think there's something in this where if you're holding people accountable and saying, okay, you're going to get skin in the game, but if you're providing bad quality connections, then you're going to, it's going to be shown on your kind of online CV, which is perhaps specific to xDAO, but viewable externally. I think, that was what I would say.
Well, wait, is this last sentence in this person whose name I'm going to try, Kaveh Golabi, said, if you have the community behind you, you should take advantage of that by having many people evaluate video interviews. And maybe that's a channel in the Discord, or it's, and it's some way where the people in the DAO participate. And again, once again, when we get to what problem are we solving? If we're solving the better recommendations problem, that last sentence was probably the way to do it. But that doesn't solve the monetization problem, for the person who does the recommending.
Well, it feels like this brings bias into it though, right? Like, so if I have to watch video interviews, suddenly it's the quality of my video, my lighting, right? Like, oh, now I can see your face. Maybe I think you have a gross zit on your face. But there's been studies about how when they do blind interviews without knowing who the person is, not seeing their gender, right? Like that actually helps eliminate bias. So I think there's something to, I think not falling into the same tropes You know,
Oh, that's interesting, Greg. That's very.
Yeah. So, you know, I think it is a tricky topic area, right? Because I think, I guess this is the challenge for you, Rachel, right? Is how do we reinvent? You know better than, you know, others will, having actually placed people, you know, into roles, you know, those biases, and how can we potentially, you know, maybe Web3 isn't the answer, by the way, right? Like maybe it's just part of the economics of it, but it's not actually part of the fulfillment of sort of the product itself, right? But I do think there's an interesting question about, are there things that this is good for? Like, are there ways to leverage, you know, sort of technology to sort of eliminate some of the bias? And I think to Francine's point, you know, to some degree, they say, you know, a good place to start is to niche down really, really small. If you were niching down for Web3 job placements, for example, right? Like, I'm not saying you should, but I'm just saying, like, you know, what would be the niche that you might imagine, you know, being a good place to focus on? Because I do think personally that, you know, Web3 provides like a blank canvas to repaint the things that we know still that exist in the world, right? So it doesn't mean like we're getting rid of the old world. I like it as a place to prototype new ways to do things that hopefully roll down or waterfall back to traditional work, right?
Oh, I love that.
And to the extent that like we could prove out new hiring techniques and capabilities inside of the Web3 ecosystem, then that might provide opportunities for scaling it outwards to the bigger sort of traditional world. Right now, I don't know if that's a big enough opportunity per se, right? Like, could you make a living doing that, et cetera, right? Like, there's all these other challenges I think that exist in that realm, right? But I do think, like, to Francine's point, I think, like, you know, what we would always advise any founder is make your problem smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So that you can solve it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, I'm not saying that you haven't necessarily scoped it that way per se yet.
No, it's a great point. I think
like discussion, right? You know, DEI is a huge problem, but DEI where, right? Like, you know, like if you make it somewhere specific, maybe you can get like better results.
Definitely. I think like the like minimum, the lowest hanging fruit for me is to take this existing community that I've fostered and do a little test run, right? And
right.
I'm the recruiter in the group. Most of the people are job seekers and just like amazing people, but they're not recruiters. So I'm like the one person really doing most of the connecting. Like there have been a couple placements made within the community with all the introductions I have facilitated. Maybe there's some that I'm not capturing too, but to kind of try this out within our community could be just like a little research project to show whether or not this could work. Obviously, it's a very small scale, but I think that could be interesting. Maybe encouraging every single person to make one introduction to someone else in their network within the community. We'll see if any jobs come out of it.
And Rachel, I'm curious too, because we've talked a lot about the, I guess the referral piece of it, but you mentioned something I kind of took a note of in your Discord. There's a lot of strong support just helping people to build out those resumes and to build out their profiles, right?
Yeah.
Are you considering like leaning into that, I guess that content, the educational content side of it anymore, or like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I've met, actually Greg connected me with a woman who's like a wonderful coach in this space, and I met with her, and so we've been talking about like a scalable way to coach the folks in the community and as our community grows, right? Because like one-on-one coaching is very expensive. It's not like super easy to access. So we've been talking about different worksheets and like prompts to provide people to help them start thinking about like how to really craft their narrative. What do they like to do? What don't they like to do in their job? Like a lot of us just haven't actually like put pen to paper on these things. So from like an educational perspective, I think more on the career path, we're thinking those things. In terms of like Web3 education, I'm leaving that to all the other amazing groups out there. There's so much to do in this space in terms of like Web3 onboarding that, you know, there's a lot of, I have started to put together, we have a What I'm Learning channel, and it's resources that I have now. Lily on my team, who's been fantastic, this morning, like finalized a document that people can go to like access resources, but we're really trying to focus on the job piece. we put together a 2-page document on tips on writing a job description that we're going to release soon for founders, and like a sample job description. So yeah, we're starting to put together some of those resources as well.
No, for sure. And I think even to the DEI part, like maybe some resources on how to take that into account, right? Because I think it gets super easy, especially as an early founder, when you're like, I need a CTO, I need somebody technical. I know my buddy over here, right? I don't have a network. And so I think that's how you start with that, not even thinking about, you're not trying to be inclusive. You're just trying to find whoever you can find.
Of course,
right? Yeah.
Totally. No, that's a great point. And part of the job description 2-pager that we put together actually is a lot on how to make your job description more inclusive in terms of language, but also just, you probably all heard this. But
yeah. I have a crazy idea for you. So, I was listening to the news this morning. They were talking about how, some people didn't go back to the jobs after sort of the pandemic because they're like, that job sucked, right? Which very much aligns with Web3, because I think a lot of Web3 is about find the job you want, not like the job that you could take, right? Like, they're not settled.
Not the job they gave you.
Yeah. But what if you inverted the whole model and just said, like, I think like what Kaveh was pointing out is that people are really good at knowing what you like. They may know crap about what you work at, like how good you are at work, right?
Yeah.
And
that's right. Nobody knows what I do. Yeah, that's a great idea.
What if you inverted it and say like, hey, what if we helped you market yourself better?
Yeah.
Create the marketplace of people who have identified real passion for something, regardless of the underlying skill set. The skill set you could backfill with like, qualifications, certifications, testing, even, right? Like, et cetera. Right. And then now you have an ecosystem for people who are like, I want a person who's not going to leave. Right. And now I'm like,
I am looking for this as a way to spend my life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a great point. And
it's not crazy, Greg. It's not crazy. It's perfect. First of all, it's perfect for Web3. And second of all, it's perfect in general because, if somebody who is a hirer needs to know who you are. So if you submitted as your resume what you wanted, everyone is always saying when they give advice about resumes, how will you help the company? Well, inverting that model would be, how will this company help me? I want this out of my life. I want to be able to practice writing, and I want to be in a job where I have to learn new things and write about them all day long. That's who I am. That is me. So then the question is, where does that fit into an organization? Then an organization could sign up and say, we really need a writer who is not afraid to write about, I don't know, synthetic biology, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, my advice always to candidates is to put very clearly at the top, what is it that you're looking for? I've reviewed multiple resumes in the past few weeks, and that's been like consistent advice, probably 80%, because no one has time to like read everything. Like you want them to understand what you're looking for, what you're good at. And so part of like those worksheets, and Arnold, your question on the resources and things like that, part of those worksheets, I want to help people craft their narrative as to like what they like to do, what they don't like to do in their job, so that they can start really fleshing that out. And then
exactly.
Did we talk a little bit about kind of what the bear market's kind of meant for your strategy, and how, I know we were talking about, we wanted to hear about how you've maybe pivoted or how that's affected you. I guess in some ways it might help, some ways it's harder. How's that? What have you been looking at that?
Yeah, I think like ultimately it's making me realize like how we need to get super specific and about our message, about our offering, because we've got like a lot of things we're trying to do. And to really like differentiate, it's more important than ever before. You can't just like, there's too much out there, too much noise to just launch a project and just be like, we're helping everything in the job related market. So that's like one thing that we've been thinking through, is like really, really clear messaging and a clear offering. But sort of to what I was saying before is, I really truly feel that this is the time to launch a project like this, because what we're doing is arming people with resources and skills to put them in like a more defensible position if they were to find themselves without a job unexpectedly, or find themselves even more unhappy than usual in a job, and then going out in a job market that became slightly more competitive, right? Like it's been a candidate's market for several years now, and that's like definitely going to change a bit with hiring freezes and layoffs, and just like more talent on the market gets more competitive for the candidate. So yeah, so that's kind of what we've been thinking through, is like how to market that and then use that to our advantage from a project perspective, because
this bear market should help you.
It should help us.
It should create a market for your services, and both in people needing to retrain themselves in what's really in Web3 outside of what they think stereotypically is in Web3, like my daughter, you know, who thinks it's a Ponzi scheme. I keep beating her around the head, you know, because yeah, you know, one part of it that has been a Ponzi scheme, but that isn't what, you know, I, who have been participating in it and helping people for the last year and a half, have seen. You know, I've seen all the collaboration, all of the, you know, different tools for artists, a lot of those things. So, but you actually, and this is what I figured out about NFTs a long time ago, you've basically started a company. And the reason why you have to do it full time is because it's very hard to start a company and not do it full time and make it succeed. But if you do, I think, you know, nobody really knows, but I think that if you give it all your Web3 skill sets and all your company building and search skill sets, you're going to be solving or helping solve a very large problem. And it's going to long outlive this bear market.
Right. That's a great point. Thank you for saying that, because I think the other piece I forgot to mention is the longevity of our project relative to maybe some other NFT projects out there that are really producing something very short term, where we're like, I'm hoping this outlives me, this community, not just this market. So yeah, that's been the goal from day one, is like how to make this a sustainable long-term community for people to like forevermore be part of. And a lot of like what we talk about in our community is like how to scale for the long term, and not just like put things out right now to see what happens, like be really methodical. But it's really hard in general as a founder, and also in a bear market where you're just like, oh my God, I want to just get this out. But yeah, we're still, I think we're in a similar place to last time, that we still have a lot of great ideas and are working through what's really our differentiator. But we've made a lot of progress from like a community growth perspective, getting our name out there more, which I know we only have a few more minutes. But that's the last thing I wanted to mention, is that we're going to be rebranding our name. And I'm very curious, all of your thoughts. I think that, first of all, since January, when I launched xDAO, since then, there's been like 4 xDAOs that have popped up, not surprisingly. And so that's one piece. And then also I'm thinking of removing the word DAO and not really referring to us as a DAO. We can always leverage some principles of a DAO, such as voting and other elements to DAOs that make it, to me, really attractive with like being decentralized. But I think ultimately we want to be sort of semi-decentralized. So I think we're going to call ourselves X Collective. instead. And
Or X Collaborative? No? Something like that. You know, I hear where you're going. I think you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm writing that down. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think it's something more like community sounding, and because that's what it is ultimately.
And less like a legal entity. I mean, in the time since we've been, you know, talking about your new effort, DAOs have emerged in people's consciousness as a legal entity.
Mm-hmm.
And you meant a lot more than that. You meant a community.
Yeah, and I also think a lot about like the inclusive element of like the term DAO actually makes a lot of people like, this is super not what
Right.
I'm trying to do. I mean, for some people, they're like, ooh, this is really cool. I'm part of a DAO. But yeah, for a lot of people, it can be maybe a bit of a turnoff for them to get involved. And so I think it's a bit more welcoming to use a term like collective or collaborative instead. So that'll be fun in this noisy market to change our name.
I think it's great. I mean, because the truth is nobody knows your name yet, you know, except the people that are already in your community. So you do it. I mean,
is the community voted at all or given any voice?
We actually, so we're using, it's funny because we originally wanted to name the art something different than the community, which, as you know, live and learn. There's too many names out there. Probably not a good idea to have multiple names for your own project. And so X Color Collective was selected for the art. And so we're just gonna do X Collective probably and like keep it like that as the new name. So that was voted on by the community early on. And I've chatted with a few people in the community to get their thoughts. Everyone seems to think that it would be a good change and not too much of a change too. Like we have our artist Maleha, she made like a beautiful logo with an X in a butterfly. And like the X is like the body of the butterfly. So we wouldn't have to change that. It'd just be like changing the name. And actually I'm working with the developer on the website. So when we do launch the new name, we'll also launch a new website and very quickly change our Twitter and everything, make it super consistent. And probably for a bit, I'll put, formerly xDAO in some places and go from there.
Yeah, no, I like it. I think it's a good idea. I think you might as well do it now. It's the first of many pivots that you will be doing as you move toward building a business. But you are building a business, and you're actually building a business that can make it. It's not like flipping NFTs, No,
I'm really excited. I'm also like, I've always wanted to start my own thing. I've always had like an entrepreneurial bug, but I didn't, to be quite honest with you, know that I was starting I didn't know I was starting something like when I started this in January. Like I didn't know.
I could have told you.
I didn't realize. I turned to someone recently and I was like, I think I just like kind of accidentally started a company. Because you're right, like this is a company. And I'm so excited to be on this track, and I've always wanted to, but it did kind of happen in a not super intentional way. Like I started with, I wanted to make a community. That was it. Like I wanted to make a community. I wanted to bring people together. I wanted to talk about hiring and provide resources to people, because the truth of the matter is, like when you leave this little bubble, like I'm in, Brooklyn, New York, and I leave the bubble and I talk to people in Venezuela and I tell them, make sure you're prepared with questions for your interview. And they say, oh, that's a great idea. It's, these things, like to be able to share this with people. And then she performs better on her interview now because she had a great question at the end. So
it's funny, Rachel, because you actually did it the right way. I think a lot of founders start with, I want to build a company. Oh, shoot, I need a community. Right? It's really, I've got this community of people that are, how can I need to organize this. I guess I need to make this a company now. Right?
Yeah.
So, no, so kudos. That's the right way.
That's true. It's like it was kind of an accident, but also a good strategy at the same time. But yeah, now I'm at the point where I'm like, scaring to make sure my LLC is in place and all that. But it's going really well. I mean, we're marching in the right direction. We've got great people like you for supporting us and helping us in our corner. So
you can call me anytime because you have just gotten on the roller coaster.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you need my phone number, Greg can give it to you.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, because you backed into it, but you're in it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. No, I'm excited and I'm committed. I mean, I wouldn't have left
Right.
where I was, and I was in a really, really great seat. And if you told me, 6 months ago that I was going to be leaving that job, especially without one lined up exactly after, I would have been like, really? Like, what am I going to be doing?
That's how it happens, honey.
Yeah.
That's how it happens.
All good though.
Awesome. Well, we are at time actually, and this has been I think a very informative conversation. I highly recommend maybe connecting with Kaveh and Dennis.
I was going to say that. I wrote their names down.
Have some passion for the topic as well. And they were pretty engaged throughout. So thank you, fellas, for your contributions as well.
Yeah.
Great. Look, I think we are still on the precipice of trying to figure out how to be better people to each other, right? And how to work better together. And there's a lot of stuff left to figure out. And I think you're in a huge area, big. I don't know if I'd call it a blue ocean, but I think it's a fairly blue ocean, right?
It's a deep ocean.
Yeah. And, look, we're happy to have you here. I have extended everyone, peer pressure her in. I've extended an opportunity for Rachel to join us permanently as one of our co-hosts. So everyone send her a DM and tell her she has to do it.
Yeah, because she's going to have time on her hands now.
But I said, I was like, not at your full time, may as well join us on a regular, right? So with that, I will say thank you to all of you for a wonderful conversation. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in and everyone who's going to watch later. We will be back next week. We have Shlomo. Do you remember Shlomo, right, Francine?
Of course.
Shlomo will be on joining us. He's an old friend of ours, and he's also one of the people on the organizing team for the Free Ross DAO, and they're doing an amazing VR installation for NFT NYC. So we're going to get a little sneak preview and a chat with Shlomo next week. So looking forward to seeing you all on Tuesday at the same time. We are 1 hour earlier, by the way, than we were previously. So looking forward to chatting with you all again. All right, everyone. Have a great one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.